Instead of gathering my strength before the longest night of my life, I was forced to waste my final hours in a cramped outpatient clinic exam room. The official letter from Pauline Walter, administrative assistant to the chief psychiatrist, burned right through my pocket. Every word of that directive was seared into my memory. A strict ban on leaving the duty zone during the 13-hour shift, exit by numerical code only, and a long, absurd list of taboos. No flammable liquids, tobacco, nail clippers, nail files, or plastic bags. Even ordinary thumbtacks, pens, paper clips, and safety pins were strictly forbidden. Ward D was a place where any little thing could become a weapon. And the resident physician, Dr. Beck, wouldn't let you close your eyes for a single second. But the reality of my 2-week rotation under Dr. Silver looked completely different. In my head, I called him Dr. Sleepy, since the vast majority of his patients came in with a single complaint: chronic insomnia. Right now, I was sitting on a hard wooden chair in an office that didn't even have a medical desk. Sitting across from me was 64-year-old Mrs. Pritchett, clutching a massive pink handbag tightly against herself. Glancing down at my notebook, I ran into my own illegible scribbles from last week, where besides the number 64 and a phrase about her inability to fall asleep, a single word was heavily underlined: cat. With a solemn smile, the patient joyfully informed me that she was sleeping much better now, all because last time I had patiently listened to her long story about grieving her cat, Mr. Whiskers, who died 6 months ago. She showered my lap with Polaroid photos of her new kitten, Mr. Fluffy, and then proudly pulled a giant portrait of her deceased pet out of a bag as a token of gratitude. I barely suppressed a shriek. Looking back at me from the canvas was something demonic. The cat was painted with such a sinister, undisguised aggression that I shuddered with disgust and hurried to carry this nightmare out into the hallway. Leaving it propped against the painted wall, there was absolutely no room for this artifact in my tiny apartment. Coming back, I knocked on the adjacent office door of Dr. Silver, who was sitting at his computer, adjusting his half-moon glasses with a practiced motion. After listening to my quick report, he suddenly remarked that I looked like I hadn't slept in days myself. I had to confess that I was wildly nervous about the night shift in Ward D. Silver rushed to praise Dr. Beck as an excellent mentor and reminded me that I would have the life-saving code and could walk out of there at any moment. He started assuring me that the patients were completely safe and under full chemical restraint, but everything inside me screamed with disbelief. If they were so safe, they wouldn't be locking the doors on the 9th floor with armored deadbolts. The fear that I would simply forget the digits of the code in a panic paralyzed my thoughts. Dr. Silver let me go early, not even suspecting my real secret. The true cause of my terror had nothing to do with student anxiety. Almost 10 years ago, I had already crossed the threshold of this facility to visit my former best friend. I still remembered her wild eyes, her matted hair, and that insane scream that I was the one who needed to be locked up here. A scream that had once sent me running without looking back. There were only 20 minutes left until the start of the shift. I was sitting in the passenger seat of an old gray Toyota, while my roommate Gabby confidently spun the wheel, blowing through a stop sign without the slightest attempt to brake. Watching the road, I caught myself thinking a dark thought about how desirable a minor accident would be. A broken pinky finger would give me a legitimate excuse to go to the ER of a regular admissions department and skip the shift. From the stress, I had already bitten my nails down almost to the quick, tightly clutching a paper bag with a homemade American cheese sandwich and a bag of chips. When I asked about my partner, Gabby reassuringly replied that I got Stephanie Margolis, a calm and level-headed student. At that exact moment, the phone in my hands vibrated violently with a short text from Cameron Berger, who had recently humiliatingly cut me out of his life. My roommate noticed my gaze and told me to just block his ass, promising to pick me up at 7 in the morning for pancakes. She parked near the circular 15-story tower of the hospital complex, beneath heavy leaden clouds that had gathered overhead. That was when Gabby brought up a critical detail. There was absolutely no cell service in Ward D, and the only way to catch even 2 bars of signal would be the staff break room, where you had to press your screen right against the glass of the barred window. I slumped down in the seat, voicing my paranoid fear that at night the staff would simply mistake me for a patient and refuse to let me out. Gabby just burst into loud, genuine laughter, taking it as a ridiculous joke. She didn't know that for me, the past was never just a distant memory. That internal breaking point happened exactly 8 years ago, when I was 16. My then best friend since kindergarten, Jade Carpenter, and I were wandering through the glamorous aisles of Ricardo's clothing store. I was standing in front of the fitting room mirror, trying on a bright pink sweater, when Jade quietly stepped up behind me, her bleached hair with dark, overgrown roots sharply contrasted with her heavy makeup and mascara that had clumped into ugly, heavy chunks. She passionately urged me to take the sweater, but I only had $37 left in my wallet, the change from 2 20s I had spent on my favorite peach iced tea. The sweater cost way more, and I was going to put it back. And then I froze, noticing a girl of about 6 nearby in a fluffy pink ruffled dress that perfectly matched the shade of the item in my hands. The child, with perfect blonde curls and huge blue eyes, looked straight at me and, in a thin, childish voice, urged me to steal the sweater, assuring me that in a big store no one would notice a thing. A cold sweat broke over me at the suggestion. Before I could even recover, Jade, whose blue eyes flashed with strange yellow flecks, painfully dug her fingers into my forearm while clutching her red purse in her other hand. She commanded me to run, and at that very second, the space exploded with the deafening roar of the anti-theft alarm. We dashed through the mall crowd, nearly knocking over a stroller and sending an elderly woman with a cane scrambling out of the way. When we finally crammed ourselves into a dead-end maintenance alcove, I lashed out at her with reproaches, terrified that an arrest would ruin my chances of going to college forever. Jade just waved it off irritably and, with absolute indifference, pulled a stolen shirt with sparkly lettering out of her bag, stating that absolutely everyone does it. When I indignantly pointed out that the blonde girl in pink had directly told me to steal it, my friend stared at me in genuine bewilderment. She firmly stated that there was no child around and that I had been standing there completely alone the entire time. That moment shattered my world forever, making me realize that my own mind was capable of creating monsters. And now, 8 years later, I was returning to this nightmare again. There were 13 hours left until the start of the shift. I stepped out of the elevator on the 9th floor, where the fluorescent lights flickered unpleasantly, mercilessly highlighting every crack in the old paint of the walls. A massive blue sign pointed the way to Ward D, and at the very end of the dead-end hallway loomed heavy metal doors with a blood-red inscription, warning that they were constantly locked. Next to it was a gray intercom box and a digital keypad. While the elevator doors were closing, my mother called me. In the background, the TV buzzed as usual. My dad was watching the evening news. I quickly lied to her, saying I was going to hit the textbooks all night, just to avoid raising a wave of panic with stories about psychiatry. When she softly asked if I had heard anything about Jade, I replied that I hadn't seen her since her mother's funeral. Jade's mother had died 2 years ago from an overdose, and I had skipped the memorial service because of my most important anatomy exam, after which my former friend simply blocked me everywhere. I hurried to hang up without even uttering the usual "I love you," and at that exact second, my chest tightened with a prophetic thought. What if that was our last conversation? I turned back to the armored doors and froze in shock. Standing by the keypad, leaning against the wall, was Cameron Berger. His massive linebacker frame completely blocked the passageway. He was wearing light blue medical scrubs about 10 sizes too big for my uniform, and a white coat that was far too short and skimpy. His square jaw spread into a smile. This was the same Cameron who, at the beginning of the summer, had broken up with me because the relationship interfered with his preparation for his orthopedic surgery board exam. I was still consumed with fury at the memory of how easily he had traded me for a test that I also had to take right alongside him. He cheerfully informed me that he had swapped shifts with Stephanie and that now we would be spending the night together. I felt nausea rise in my throat at his casual attitude and coldly ignored the remark. Frantic, I pulled out my phone and dialed Pauline Walter's office in hopes of canceling the shift, but after 5 long rings, I heard only the mechanical voice of the answering machine saying the office was closed. There was no way out. Cameron kept chattering thoughtlessly, calling a night in a locked ward a cool adventure and romantic. When I sharply asked what we would do in case of a patient attack, he just gave a goofy smile and called such a development unlikely. His words proved to me once again that this guy had a serious congenital defect in his empathy gene. My comment caught him off guard. Cameron's cheeks instantly flushed with awkward red splotches. He took a step toward me, starting some sort of excuse, but he didn't get to finish. Right above our heads, the sharp, deafening roar of the electronic alarm went off, making us both flinch back. Something clicked heavily inside the door, and the magnetic locks disengaged. Cameron stepped aside, clearing the space in front of the dark opening, and with an inviting gesture, motioned for me to go first. My stomach instantly twisted into a tight knot, and everything inside me screamed to run away. But I took a breath and crossed the threshold of Ward D, taking my first step into the trap.